today and talk about how Satan destroyed my life, almost destroyed my life, and how I was deceived, and how I'm currently working working through this deception. Because, um, as we know, life, when you walk the path of Christ, you discover things along the way. Things aren't just automatically all revealed to you at once. Rather, along the way, you discover certain things and you use that in your spiritual journey. It's almost like a tool belt, as I like to think of it. I wanted to share what I discovered because I have a feeling that I'm not the only one that might be in this boat. Because I've spoken to I've spoken to people in the past about certain things, topics, and a lot of people seem to be in the same boat that I was. And I want to provide, if you're somebody that's in this boat, a way out, way back to Jesus, because the life that I was living is not one that anybody should live. So to start off, a little bit of a backstory. Growing up, high school, beginning of college, never had a girlfriend, never had a relationship. I really wasn't associated with what you would call the cool kids. I never really had friends, if you will. And very early on, I say about high school, I found pornography. And I found that this was a way for me to find an escape. For one reason or another, it was an escape. I didn't have relationships with people. I would use these pornographic websites to establish relationships with what I thought was good, which was not good. Eventually, I found myself in a habit of what once was one day became every day. Eventually, that led to years and years of pornographic use, and it destroyed not only my view on women in general, but in relationships. And that's really where this deception comes into play, because when I would see others around me who have girlfriends, who are in relationships, how happy they were, in my mind, this relationship was all sex-based, nothing else. I was so twisted in the mind that this was the reality of it. And as a result, I was seeking out a relationship that was purely sex-based and nothing else, which does exist. We see this happen, we see Tinder, we see all these dating websites. And when I would not have success on those websites, I would then enter this cycle of depression, turn to drug use, anxiety, turn to drug use. And instead of this cycle would basically perpetuate itself, because in using drugs, I found myself in a cycle where I felt good about being depressed, good about being anxious, and as a result, I would just keep feeding into this. Whenever I feel lonely, just take drugs, go back to the pornography. I would get depressed because of it, take drugs, feel good about it. It was a cycle. It wouldn't be until I discovered Jesus again later on in life. Really, he found me when I went back to church one day. The healing power of the Eucharist is something that I can go on and hours about. But I remember when I decided to go back to church, when I decided to go attend Mass, the minute I received the host, the Eucharist, immediately something clicked on. This is something that I talked about with some other people but something clicked on inside of me. And all of a sudden, I had this urge to keep going back to church. And the more and more I started to go back to church, the more and more this thing inside just kept growing and growing and growing. Before I knew it, the drug use started to subside, with help, obviously. I started to develop this less sexualized view of relationships in general. My pornography use started to die down. This horrible relationship that I had with women started to die down, and most importantly, I started to feel less alone because I knew that something was always with me. I was always able to go to church. And I say the church because in the Bible it's written, I believe it's in one of the Gospels. I'm still reading through the Bible, and I have to memorize these verses because it's explicitly where they are in the Gospel. But it speaks about how God wants us to be welcoming. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was hungry and you gave me food. I was cold and you gave me warmth, something along those lines. And I remember in something that I left out of the story I mentioned earlier, I did that deliberately because as I started to grow closer and closer to Jesus Christ through the Eucharist, through going to Mass, and through discovering this faith again, I inevitably found in my worst of my worst that the church was actually always there for me. See, there was a time where I was in the midst of this horrible cycle of this porn use, this drug use, etc. And I had actually convinced myself to go to, it was a Bible study. And, one sec. A lot of airplanes flying over today. I'm not really sure why. But I inevitably convinced myself to go one time because I just had this urge. I just felt I would try it out one day. And to say these people were welcoming was an understatement. I mean, I was at the worst of the worst. I wasn't showering. I was, I think my facial hair is bad now. My facial hair was, it was bad. Hair was overgrown, etc. I was not taking care of myself. I was pretty much the embodiment of low. And even through this lowness of my life, I still managed to make friends. Literally after that first meeting, I found myself at a bar drinking with people. We were talking, we were being friends. It blew my mind because this is something I never really had in my life. But the enemy had deceived me so much, I felt uncomfortable in that, and I never went back to that meeting. Something I still regret to this day. I instead had decided to go back to my perpetual drug use, my perpetual lust, my perpetual pornography use. And I eventually found myself in a position where I was alone. Again. Then I kept going back to church. Then I kept building myself back up. And through my hard work, through my prayer, through my faith, it's really what healed me. My faith that I could be healed through the Eucharist, through Jesus Christ. I found myself back to a position where I'm now in a community of people that are welcoming, regardless of who I am. A community that acknowledges we are all sinners. We have all messed up in life. And this really brings me to this deception that I wanted to talk about. And pride really is a big deceiver because pride is dangerous. They say it's one of the deadliest sins because it blinds somebody into thinking they're unable to be wrong. It gets rid of that humility and it destroys humbleness. It almost places themselves above Jesus Christ because you don't seek his help for things. Instead, you think you can do it yourself. I thought I could do it myself, and I was wrong, miserably wrong. I thought I could place myself above Jesus and say, I don't need him. I can just keep doing this the way I wanted to do it. which turned out to be a horrible idea. And as a result, the deception led me into this cycle of drug use, feeling good about my depression. Again, I won't explain it all over again, but it led me into that cycle. And I remember, and as I'm coming out of this cycle and I'm thinking about it, it really dawned on me about how this deception, about how the enemy kept me in this deception by making me feel good about how bad I was doing. How bad the depression, anxiety, I felt good about that. It kept me in that. And it kept me in that cycle of nonstop drug use, nonstop pornography. And I wanted to talk about this because I don't feel like I'm the only one in this boat. I'm shouldn't be quick to blame society on everything. But one of the things we know about society is that we don't really turn our backs on sexualized things, I should say. If you want to have sex, go ahead and do it. If you get pregnant, you don't want to have the baby anymore, well, we all know what happens, unfortunately. And if you want to go have sex, you have STDs, well, just go get them fixed and continue to go have sex. Continue to go, I can go on and on and on about the fault of society, but the point is, society doesn't really show the light through Jesus. They show this light through self-help, through the self, not through Jesus. And it almost seems like society is perpetuating this pride idea that go ahead, you can figure it out yourself. Don't turn to Jesus for him to help you. It's kind of a scary thing, because if you live your life prideful and unable to be helped by Jesus, you don't accept his faith and salvation. When you deny the Holy Spirit in that way, they say that is the unforgivable sin. And I don't really want to see anybody go through what I went through. To see somebody go through and be, deceived and have the unforgivable sin and not even realize it. Just think about that. That's kind of a pretty terrifying thing. Yeah. I think I said all I've wanted to say. I thank everybody for watching. I had some very colorful comments, but again, that is to say, it is what happens for some reason when you preach the word. Bad people come and try to stop you. It is what it is. Not every comment was bad, though. I see you, Bernardo. But yeah. Now, the big takeaway that I wanted to tell everybody is, trust Jesus. No matter how far gone you are, no matter if you're being deceived, what cycle you're in, Jesus can always save you. He can pull you out. You just have to have faith. You have to build that relationship with him. And that's really what it boils down to. Society, as I said, won't bring you to true salvation. They're only going to tell you to... One second. They're only going to tell you to continue to focus on yourself and, do whatever feels pleasurable to you. Not what you want is not necessarily what you need. So again, I want to thank everybody for watching. I'm going to probably end up making a main video about this topic because it goes a little bit further, as deception really just doesn't stop outside of the church, unfortunately. But thank you everybody for watching. Have a blessed day. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you and be gracious. God bless.